depression, and depression leads to poor food selection, and poor food selection leads to either A or B. Once again, being able to see how psychology plays a big part in our human choices, we can see that because we like the taste of sweets so much, we are always triggering what is called cellular growth from the moment breakfast occurs. So breakfast leads eventually to adrenal fatigue because you are constantly asking your pancreas to create insulin, which at this point, once again, adrenal fatigue is another quick way of saying diabetes. Now, diabetes is simply a representation of how your body is handling sugar levels. But say that your sugar levels are off, that goes back to depression. You are now upset. Depression rhymes with medication. Why? Because medication is meant to help you make better, choices, quote unquote, while at the same time, medication is robbing your body of magnesium. Now, this is not what we want at all for anybody that we care about. So, the more you learn about how magnesium and iron toxicity are the constant situations that most ailments start from, once things get worse from here, they go on to here. Because most individuals who are not aware that consuming carbohydrates will create free radicals, most individuals don't know this. They also don't know that they need to eat antioxidants to prevent free radical issues. So what happens then is that because there are too many free radicals, now we have our metabolism that's not replicating correctly, right? Maybe it's not cancer yet, but we see that something is not working correctly. Let me go on, because adrenal fatigue also has thyroid issues as one of the main things that most associate with it. Because when you have thyroid issues, that's another way of saying your thyroid is the direct representation of how your internal adrenals are doing. So, if you see yourself gaining weight, that is a thyroid expression of what is going on with your internal infrastructure through the adrenals. The adrenals, which basically help us create, once again, glands. This is where I think I had it here somewhere. Okay, I did not put it up and I apologize. But we want to go ahead and be here. This is why keto is good, because of hormones. You want the body to create more hormones easier so that the liver can start doing less, but by doing the transition from carbohydrates to fats, you'll stop creating as many free radicals in the body. Therefore, you'll stop the rate of disruption of the replication of the DNA, causing us to then look back on keto as a medical miracle that it is. Because keto is the best thing for the brain, considering the brain is all fat. It's fat. It's kind of like a wax. The brain is fat wax. It's really what it is. And so because it's wax, it's malleable. When we say malleable, I mean it is manipulatable. You can move it around in a sense, and you could recreate it. It is to be manipulated. And so the idea of this manipulation of the brain resides in your ability to understand how BAT-D can be used. And BAT-D is another way of saying beta, alpha, theta, delta. This BAT-D is the key to being able to choose in what state your body operates. I'll do some more videos on that down the road. But the idea here is this, all right? When you are approaching any type of solution, whether it's a trauma, that's going to cause stress. It will lead to a loss of magnesium. So what you need to do is, now that you've learned this solution, you need to go back to the traumas and you need to remove them by writing about them, but leading others towards the solution. You can't get rid of this trauma if you don't lead others to the solution. But you see, others would continue to have this problem if somebody did not take the time to create a path to the solution. And that is your responsibility. That these traumas that you've had, let's say that you've lost a parent, well, we need to now help others that come after us surpass this catastrophic event. Well, we got to tell them, look, I understand that what you've gone through. Here's the first thing you need to understand. Because you have suffered so much stress, here is some magnesium that will help calm your central nervous system. Because once we calm your central nervous system, you can then start breathing with ease. Now the trick is, once you start breathing with ease, you need to learn the math behind breathing. And it's simple, but it's important. So when it comes to breathing, you don't want to breathe into the chest. You want to breathe into the lungs. My best advice for you, if you're someone that has never taken a real deep breath before, I want you to prepare yourself because it is refreshing. But breathing not into your chest, but into the deep capsules of the lung is what's actually going to allow you to be able to make the most out of each breath. You should see the lung expanding because it's actually all about lung oxygen capacity. Now, I want you to think, when was the last time you held your breath? What tends to happen is most individuals only think one-dimensionally. They only think about how much oxygen they can take in. But I want to remind you that there are two things going on right now in that moment when you take a breath. So if you take a breath, you are going to consume as much oxygen as possible. That'll be in your lungs. Now, in the period of time that you hold that breath, here we go. During the time that you hold it without letting it go, your body has to learn how to operate or work during periods of time which are called carbon monoxide, right? Or carbon dioxide, CO2. During the period of time when your body is currently running off of CO2 and not oxygen, this is the period of time when your body starts getting kind of woozy. And that's kind of why people get aggressive. People are aggressive because your amygdala actually has a receptor that catches how much CO2 is in the brain. And so if there's a high amount of CO2 in the brain, your amygdala or your reptilian brain triggers, and so that way you could survive. And that means that you're going to be more aggressive. You're going to try to do whatever you can to go into panic or in speeding up type of way, so that way you can get out of the situation, find a way to breathe, and take that deep, fresh breath again. So without even realizing it, our brain and our body are constantly trying to fight for a synchronicity between peace and fresh, deep breaths. The best way to find it is to do as the great yogis say and do water breathing. All right, so water breathing means that you are going to do 4 seconds going in, 4 seconds going out. Learning how to do that will cause you to take control of your personal heart rate. Going back again to what I mentioned earlier, that if your maximum heart rate, which is found through the equation 220 minus your age, whatever number you get there, let's say that I'm 39 years old and my maximum heart rate is then going to be 181. Well, what that means now is that if I do my math, so 181 times 0.8, there's going to be a line at that 80% threshold that if my heart rate beats faster than that line or that number, my body is no longer going to choose to combine oxygen with fat. It's actually going to go ahead and switch its metabolism from oxygen and fat to working off of carbohydrates. And so, because the body needs to have a low heart rate in order to access fat burning metabolism, and most people do not know how to breathe properly, this inconsistent breathing leads to most people's body just naturally trying to do whatever it can to get a good breath. So it's going to do one of two things. If the individual doesn't breathe, the body will increase the heart rate so that the body doesn't have to run off of fats at a low heart rate, but it will increase the heart rate so that it can run off of carbs at a higher heart rate. So I want you to think about that. The more carbohydrates it runs off of, because poor breathing, it'll cause more free radicals to be created. You need to keep this in mind, because as we go on, your organ health is determined by your ability to give the cells what they need in the sense of salts and omega-3s, because bone broth plus omega-3s is the key to cell strength. Doesn't mean that you have to eat beef every day, but what we are talking about is bone broth. This is the marrow stuff, right? We want to think about the bone broth. It's going to have the collagen that we need in order to give our internal density strength, our bones, the infrastructure. Then the omega-3s are going to come in and provide with cellular infrastructure support so that our cell wall is rigid. This is key, as well as when you're in keto, because hormones and cells all need to be in the optimal levels, which is why olive oil is actually one of the most important things that you could do into your diet. Hence why going keto, getting some more fats in different states is ideal. And not only will that help with inflammation, arthritis, diabetes, joint pain, and all of the rest of the ailments that we're discussing, but it will provide the brain with the rest in the sense of how much it's being stimulated at the central nervous system level. So what we're talking about with all of this is that breathing and lung training is going to be the key to oxygen and CO2 consumption. Because if your brain does not get comfortable under both situations, with oxygen and without oxygen, then you are always going to be a victim to how you respond to these situations. I would recommend that at least once a week you train holding your breath. Hold your breath for as long as you can. Remember, keeping the lungs filled and not the chest filled will be the solution, because the capillaries, or the location where your veins can actually pull out the oxygen, is going to be found back here instead of up here. This is called your panic receptors. We want to focus on our calming receptors, which are found back here. So when you take a deep breath, make sure you breathe back here, not up front. And as we go on, once again, the real reason why breathing matters is because when we look at our brain, it is being, governed by the 12 cranial nerves, all right? So we have 12 cranial nerves, 12. These 12 cranial nerves are actually what dictates our body's control, our health, and the way that we move. And so what most people don't realize is that pneumogastric nerve, the 10th, it goes right through the front and the back. So when most people spend all day on their computer and their neck is coming up, or maybe they sleep wrong and they don't take care of their neck, they don't put their neck or their pneumogastric nerve at ease. And so if there's any kind of pinching or disruption of the pneumogastric nerve, then what that means is that the communication from brain to gut doesn't work. it's not just about what you put into the gut and the gut sends a message from here up, but the brain also has to communicate from here down. And it does that through signals from the pneumogastric nerve or the 10th cranial nerve, which goes through both the back and the front. So having good shoulder mobility and being able to spend time stretching the neck is ideal, so that then our nervous system could do what it has to do to send signals all the way down to our stomach so that our organs can actually work correctly. Most people don't realize that the 12 cranial nerves are actually what's responsible for how everything inside of our body works. All right, because your body is dependent upon the 12 cranial nerves. This is why injuries at the C level, at the cervical level, right? Cervical injuries are catastrophic because they determine everything about our organs. And so being able to understand how important it is to stimulate and to protect the cranial nerves lets you know that if your cranial nerves are working in optimal condition, then organ health is possible. But if there's some kind of issue at the cranial level or the cranial nerve or at the neck region, then we should probably start there so that all the electrical wiring is actually working properly from here all the way down to the organs. Now, when we look at specific organ health, we got to realize that all the ailments that we can be going through, whether it comes from our hands being tingly or our feet being tingly, comes down to, one, is there enough magnesium? But two, as you can see here, if this is your tailbone and these are your feet, let's say that both feet are here, we got to think about the calves. These two here are just as important as it is our fifth chakra, our heart chakra right here, right between, right? So this here, this is pump one. This here, calves equals pump number one. And then we have our heart, which is pump number two, right? So you got to keep in mind that if you don't move your feet or if you don't move your calves, you don't circulate the blood back up to the heart. And what most people don't realize is that because they have a stagnant lifestyle or they don't do a lot of stretching or movements, then their lymphatic system starts taking a toll. And so when there is a lack of stimulation of pump one down here, there is a lack of stimulation of lymphatic detoxification. And so lymphatic detoxification actually takes place under the left armpit. And so what we want to do to encourage organs and our lymphatic system performance is that we got to think about all the supplements that we could think about consuming, but not in pill form, but in natural food consumption form. We want the organic version, not the synthetic version of the nutrients, the density or the materials that we want. It's actually the minerals, right? And so you could look for it in seaweed, E3 Live, chromium, once again found in nutritional yeast. If you were looking to go ahead and fix your pancreas, chromium is what you want. Magnesium, you want all 9 types of magnesium, hence why we should eat different types of nuts and different types of vegetables. But then we have the entourage effect. This is going to be as a whole. We want to kind of relieve the entire central nervous system, because central nervous system health is going to require you to put the entourage effect, which means some THC and CBD, in order to come at a perfect ratio. You need to go ahead and do some research on that, because that way you can create the perfect concoction for your personal level of tolerance. And then we got to look at turmeric, because turmeric has a tremendous effect in helping us create brown versus white fat. Now, white fat is actually the kind of useless fat that just kind of sits there in case of emergency, which is why taking maybe 2 to 3 days without eating is good, because your body has that reserve in case of emergencies or periods of time without eating. So what you want to think about is, with turmeric, you can help your body turn some of that white fat into brown fat. And when it does that, this will increase the rate of metabolism. That means how fast your body uses up calories and how fast it breaks down food. This is good because you want to have more brown fat. This will increase how fast your body can utilize food and turn it into energy and utilize that energy versus consuming food, storing it into the back pocket, and saving it for a day where in case of emergencies. And so that's why turmeric is so powerful. It has this transcendental effect, turning white fat into brown fat. Then we want to think about lion's mane because that's great for, and I'm going to put it right here, neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is going to be the one thing that you want to keep in mind when it comes to rebuilding your brain health, because neuroplasticity is stimulated by psychedelics, and that's why we use it as a rewards for our body. Only when we are doing good in life do we want to present ourselves with psychedelics. If you're somebody who's trying to get out of trauma, you only want to put psychedelics into your life once you feel like you are doing good. If you feel like you are doing good and you consume psychedelics, you will be consuming psychedelics in a clear and positive state of mind. But if you are currently going through some traumas and you feel like the world's against you, don't look at psychedelics as a way out of these situations. On the contrary, they are actually going to show you a dark, deep part of yourself that maybe you didn't need to deal with at the moment. You should probably, if that's the case and you're dealing with some traumas, I would say take the time, smoke some weed, and write a little bit or draw a little bit, but find a way to connect to the self so that you can express the trauma before trying to work through the trauma. Because if you don't know what the trauma is, you can't work past it. Remember, the solution to a trauma is to recognize it, then to write about it and lead others to the answer so that they don't have to search very hard. All you have to do is prove to them that the solution is a long-term solution. In other words, a permanent solution. And so what I mean by that is you don't want to be limited by a trauma. So what you have to do is you have to recognize it, you write it down, and then you try to find a way out of there. And if you did find a way out of there, write how you got out of there so that others could then follow those footsteps, and then write testimonies about how others followed those footsteps. And lastly, celebrate by enjoying a psychedelic ritual that will allow you to then understand how surpassing that previous trauma will let you then burn off that previous identity and rise from the ashes as the new identity that you have, because you've earned this new identity. You are no longer held by the trauma, but you have surpassed the trauma. And that is the relationship that most people don't understand with psychedelics, and they do not use psychedelics as a reward. They actually use psychedelics as a way out of a situation, when in all reality, a psychedelic experience is meant to only emphasize this connection or sensations or emotions that you're feeling, and they're meant to bring them to the surface. So keep that in mind, because as we go on, lion's mane is going to play a huge part with the aging brain, and it'll be a huge piece of this whole protocol if we're looking to achieve long-term health, longevity, vitality, and increase the overall human energy. So sauerkraut, I apologize if I misspelled it, it actually possesses the DNA or the genes that our stomach can read, because there's about 14 different genes that our stomach needs in order to replicate bacteria. When you put sauerkraut, our body will be able to turn it into good bacteria for the gut. Now this is good. Good bacteria means short chain triglycerides, which means a gut wall is going to be sealed. And that's the key. You always want to make sure that you bring in sauerkraut at least once or twice a week in order to promote the growth of good bacteria. By the way, you could also do kefir. You could do a bunch of fermented foods. Sauerkraut, however, is one of the ones that I know for a fact that will let you repopulate your gut with the proper gut bacteria that you need in order to be able to then say, hey, look, my body, because I did this, has this. And if it has good bacteria, because you put the sauerkraut in there, remember, sauerkraut first, that then becomes good bacteria inside your gut. Once you've done that for about a week or so, this is called our gut repopulation protocol, right? Because you have to repopulate the gut with good bacteria. Sauerkraut. Then you go ahead and repopulate, and then you feed the good bacteria, you feed it smoothies, greens, vegetables, all that good fiber, because the bacteria, when it eats fiber, it'll convert that fiber, just like you shit out waste. Well, these good bacteria, they'll shit out what the body needs in order to, once again, seal the gut lining. This is called short chain triglycerides. Do your research, but part of the most important reasons for being able to go ahead and go into ketogenic lifestyles is to be able to bring our body what is called medium chain triglycerides, MCT. Medium chain triglycerides are a form of fats that your body can handle really well, all right? Versus long chain, poly chain, fats. These fats, they're longer, they're like pizza. You don't want pizza fats. You want medium chain triglyceride or short chain triglycerides. These different types of fats, the body can understand. So, sauerkraut creates good bacteria. Good bacteria needs vegetables so that when good bacteria eats vegetables, it can process it and secrete what is called short chain triglycerides, which your body will be able to use to then seal or close any holes that there may be in your gut or in your stomach. Because if there's holes or any kind of like spaces in your gut where little particles of food can kind of go through, what then happens is that any of those particles can contaminate or create a toxic environment, once again, because of this. It's all about the blood. Your blood has to have a pH level that is alkaline. So if your blood is not alkaline, then you are not healthy. And so if your blood is not healthy due to a loss of magnesium or iron toxicity, or, as you can now understand, never really eating to repopulate your gut, this leads to a leaky gut, or you are suffering from too much stress because of traumas, which then leads for your body to then lack the circulation because of, obviously, you're not getting the proper stimulation. Or we go ahead and look at the heart rate, and most people don't realize that they don't know how to breathe. So being active is actually counterproductive when you don't know how to breathe. So think about that. Next, we've talked about how to use your 24 hours to increase your voltage, to increase organ performance, to increase your digestive strength, to increase your gland performance. Obviously, we gotta go keto to increase gland secretion performance. Back destimulation. So in order to change from your beta or alpha or theta or delta, we need to use headphones with different frequencies. All right, and I'll talk a little bit more about that if you inquire. I have absolutely no problem giving you more information. But the idea is that you have the entire 24 hours to stimulate your body through what is called these different wavelength cycles, and only with the intention that the more you can discipline yourself to be a student of the brain states, then you will have to apply that. Because if you match your body up with your moon, meaning, someone like myself, I'm a Taurus. So every month, I know when the moon will be in Taurus. There are certain rules that your body has to follow from that period on, and 14 days before. Now this means that you are looking to expand from your 7 chakra awareness, and you want to go and look at the bigger picture at the 12 chakra awareness, right? When you are entering this, if you are looking at controlling your 30-day clock and synchronizing, that's because you are looking to enter our 12 chakra system. But if you're someone who's not yet ready to discipline themselves and is still just looking to understand how to find balance between the circadian rhythm, then you would go ahead and abide by everything that we have discussed thus far about being able to change the way that we approach our nutrition or our 24 hours. And we want to look at magnesium as a source of health, because that is the mineral of motion, versus calcium, which is the mineral of cement. All right, we don't want to think of calcium, we want to think of motion. So, in order to keep our body healthy, every day you have to think about doing different eye movement patterns, not just looking at your screen, but you want to think about doing different eye movement patterns, which will keep your brain more focused and stronger because your eyes have more diverse movement patterns. Lastly, you want to think about improving your spinal mobility, because the very first gland in the body, right here, the first gland, it's in the brain, and it created the cerebral spinal fluid. All right, the cerebral spinal fluid is the fluid, just like the number 9. That's why I think it's amazing. It goes in the brain at night and it flows up and down the body during the day. Those who know the truth about the number 9 understand how the 9 is a symbol for the central nervous system, and how the cerebral spinal fluid has this incredible relationship of living in our brain at nighttime, yet cycling up and down our brain and spine during the day. Because if it cycles up and down the spine, it becomes kind of like one of those shake weights, or like self-cranking generators, where there's copper around carbon, and the more that it goes up and down, it actually creates this magnetic resonance, because we are magnetic creatures. And what happens is that the cerebral spinal fluid, as it flows up and down our spine, it creates this what do we call that? Electromagnetic sphere, or a radiation. We call it an aura. And so your aura is actually determined by the speed or the rate at which your cerebral spinal fluid flows up and down your spine. And the only way that we can improve cerebral spinal fluid motion is by bending over and standing up and squeezing your glutes. Most people don't realize that by squeezing your glutes, every time you squeeze, you push the cerebral spinal fluid up to the brain, and then once it touches the brain, it can come back down. And this is the science of the cerebral spinal fluid. It's something very light that I think you should understand, but if you understand how the brain can be anointed by the cerebral spinal fluid, and as it comes back down and it touches the most sacral base of our human being, which is down here in the hip region or the sacral region, then you understand how we have this constant dance of cerebral spinal fluid, which ultimately your ability to control and manipulate that cerebral spinal fluid energy is actually what increases your ability to heal at nighttime. Because when you are able to enter the realm of healing, that means delta is the realm of healing. This is why you must understand how your brain shifts from beta, alpha, theta, and delta. And sometimes, for those few that have been able to unlock the potential of the human brain, they can even enter gamma and then become channels of communication with others in different dimensions. Now, we're not going in that direction yet, but I do want you to understand that binaural beats, light, and sound will affect everything of how you perceive the world. So In being able to ground yourself, that means that take time, take your shoes off, go walk barefooted outside, root yourself to the earth, remove these free radicals from your well-being, and allow your body to operate without having any blockages of energy. Remember, these blockages of energy will come from traumas or deficiencies, injuries, stress, consumption of carbohydrate, which creates free radicals, or because you have sustained prolonged activation of your mTOR, or because you have not given your spine or your cerebral spinal fluid the respect that it deserves to move up and down the spine throughout the 24 hours appropriately, so therefore your body is now lacking this oil. And the cerebral spinal fluid is an electromagnetic oil that carries waves of electricity. Think about that, because as it goes up, it charges the brain. Lastly, because we want to make sure that you are able to go ahead and lead a successful life where you can recharge your body, you always want to keep in mind that in everything that we are doing here, yes, there are traumas, yes, there are deficiencies, but ultimately it's your mindset that you're not going through this for no reason. You are currently going through everything that you're going through because you are a lighthouse for others. And that needs to become just as true as it is for me as it is for you. You watching this video is forcing me to become my best self. So you need to step up and become your best self by learning what it is within yourself that has allowed you to become a leader for others and a lighthouse. Because if you take your current pain and allow it to help you, catalyze yourself into the next version of yourself, well, you could reverse engineer that and help others find a solution out of their pain. I would imagine for somebody that, let's say, lost their parents too soon, I would imagine that the most important thing to know is that you can always find a connection back to them. Well, the connection is found within your own DNA. Once you look at your own DNA and you realize, look, this is my lineage, this is where I come from, this is my birth date, this is my purpose, I have to find my salts, I have to share this wisdom of the salts for salvation with everybody I meet, because every child will no longer have a mom or a dad to teach them this information. So we need to make sure that we take ownership, and we need to teach the youth that's coming after us how to actually take this truth of imperfection and turn it into purpose for innovation. Because if we are able to innovate the way that we perceive this deficiency of not being created perfect, then we actually allow ourselves to all look at each other under the same pretense of equality, because we are all imperfectly perfect, looking for a solution that is found in simple salts. Salts and body awareness are one and the same. So for those that are pursuing better body control and better body awareness and better health, it all starts with our awareness of stress. Once you understand what is causing you stress, whether it's physical, emotional, whether it's environmental, or it's metabolic, there's only 4 things. These 4 things, once again, are always going to try to bring you down. And the only thing that can bring you down is a overwhelming accumulation of free radicals and an excessive overuse of the mTOR activation. So too much mTOR activation or too many free radicals, these are both perfect recipes for disease. So I want you to think about all the ailments, all the situations, all the discomforts that you're going through. Could they be found in solving one of these or one of these? The solution is simple. Make sure you accumulate the reasons for your stress. Write them down. Give yourself the proper salts that you need, in order to put your body into autophagy, so that the moment that your body goes into autophagy, your body does not feel deficient in magnesium, so therefore all the available ATP can be utilized in order to recycle the body's current bad cells, eats them up, creates brand new ones, and it allows you to start from a clean slate. At which point, if you are able to go 2 days without eating, I then have absolutely no problem with helping you reach the next level of health. But in order for me to give you my best, I do ask that you go ahead and try to apply what we've discussed, from magnesium to being able to understand the blood pH level, to understanding how the creation of free radicals has a tremendous effect on your adrenals, which if your adrenals are overwhelmed, that means that now we have to detox your body. And in order to detox your body, we need to prepare your body by giving it a few days without food. Therefore, autophagy will be important. We have discussed a lot of things today. I understand that I took you left, right, and all over the place. But I wanted to make sure that, as you can see, we have a clear, detailed explanation as to where things are going, because for the next year, we want to have a journey of mental evolution and 1 year of at least 10 months of discipline. Because if you cannot discipline yourself for 10 months, then you're not really ready to reach the expansion of chakra awareness into the 12. You got to stay within your 7. And living within the 7 is okay, because some people are just not ready to expand into their 12. But living within your 7 will at least allow you to know that you have control over yourself. Maybe you're not